Welcome, fellow night owls and curious minds. Get comfortable, dim those lights, and let's embark on a gentle journey into one of humanity's most fascinating subjects, the psychology of attraction and social connection. Tonight, we're diving deep into the subtle art of human magnetism, exploring the psychological principles that govern how we connect, communicate, and captivate one another. Before we start, make sure to subscribe, like and share from which country you are watching and what is your local time. It is always amazing to see where everyone is tuning in from. Picture this: you're at a coffee shop, and you notice someone across the room. Without saying a word, they seem to command attention. People gravitate toward them, conversations flow effortlessly, and there's an almost magnetic quality to their presence. What creates this invisible force? The truth is, attraction isn't magic, it's psychology. And tonight, we're going to uncover the gentle secrets behind human magnetism, the kind that draws people in not through manipulation, but through understanding the deeper currents of human nature. Let's start with the most fundamental truth: humans are social creatures wired for connection. Our brains are literally designed to seek out and form bonds with others. This isn't just about romantic attraction, it's about the broader spectrum of human magnetism that makes some people unforgettable. The first secret lies in understanding that attraction operates on multiple levels simultaneously. There's the conscious level, what we think we want. Then there's the subconscious level, what our deeper minds are actually responding to. And finally, there's the evolutionary level, the ancient programs running in the background of our minds, shaped by millions of years of human survival and reproduction. Consider the concept of presence. You know that feeling when someone walks into a room and somehow the energy shifts? That's not accident or coincidence. Presence is a learnable skill, rooted in several psychological principles. It begins with something called embodied confidence, not the loud, attention-seeking kind, but the quiet self-assurance that comes from being completely comfortable in your own skin. This kind of presence is created through what psychologists call congruence, when your thoughts, feelings, and actions are all aligned. When someone is truly congruent, they emit a subtle but powerful energy that others find deeply attractive. It's like they're broadcasting on a frequency that says, "I know who I am, and I'm comfortable with that knowledge." But here's where it gets interesting, and this is our first gentle secret: true magnetism isn't about perfection. It's about authenticity wrapped in confidence. The most magnetic people aren't those without flaws, they're those who've learned to embrace their flaws as part of their unique charm. Research in social psychology shows us that vulnerability, when expressed from a place of strength rather than neediness, creates powerful connections. This is called the beautiful mess effect. We're actually drawn to people who can show their human side while maintaining their composure. Think about the last person who truly captivated you. Chances are, it wasn't because they were perfect. It was because they were perfectly themselves, comfortable with their strengths, aware of their growth areas, and unafraid to be genuine in their interactions. This brings us to the psychology of emotional safety. People are drawn to those who make them feel emotionally safe, not just physically safe, but psychologically comfortable. This safety comes from several sources: predictable behavior, emotional regulation, and the ability to hold space for others' emotions without becoming overwhelmed by them. The magnetic person understands that everyone they meet is carrying some form of invisible burden, insecurities, fears, hopes, dreams. They've learned to create a space where others can let their guard down, even just a little bit. This isn't about being a therapist, it's about being a calm, non-judgmental presence in a world that often feels chaotic and judgmental. As we settle deeper into our exploration tonight, remember that these aren't techniques to manipulate or control others. They're insights into the beautiful complexity of human connection, understanding that can help us build more meaningful relationships and become more authentic versions of ourselves. Now, let's drift into our second chapter, the subtle art of attention. In our hyperconnected, constantly distracted world, the ability to give someone your complete attention has become almost revolutionary. Imagine you're having a conversation with someone, and they put their phone face down, make gentle eye contact, and listen, really listen, to what you're saying. How does that feel? In a world where most people are mentally composing their next response while you're still talking, true listening has become a rare and magnetic quality. The psychology behind this is fascinating. When we feel truly heard, our brains release oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. This neurochemical response creates feelings of trust, connection, and well-being. The person who triggered this response becomes associated with these positive feelings, making them naturally more attractive to us. But here's the deeper secret: Magnetic listening isn't just about being quiet while someone else talks. It's about creating what psychologists call empathic resonance, the ability to tune into not just someone's words, but their emotional frequency. This involves several subtle skills. First, there's emotional mirroring, unconsciously matching the other person's emotional tone. If they're excited, you allow yourself to feel some of that excitement. If they're concerned about something, you let the concern register in your own emotional awareness. This isn't mimicry, it's genuine emotional attunement. Then there's the art of the meaningful pause. In our rush to fill silence, we often interrupt the natural rhythm of conversation. But silence, when held with presence rather than awkwardness, can be profoundly connecting. It gives the other person space to go deeper, to share something they might not have planned to reveal. Let me tell you about the psychological spotlight effect. This is our tendency to believe that others are paying much more attention to us than they actually are. Most people are so worried about how they're coming across that they're not fully present in the moment. The person who can step out of this self-focused mindset and genuinely focus on others becomes immediately magnetic. This connects to what researchers call the listener advantage. Studies show that people who are skilled listeners are perceived as more intelligent, more trustworthy, and more attractive than those who are skilled speakers. Yet our culture often emphasizes speaking ability over listening ability. The magnetically attractive person has learned to flip this script. But there's a layer deeper than just listening. It's about listening with what we might call appreciative awareness. This means noticing and gently acknowledging the unique qualities, perspectives, and experiences the other person brings to the interaction. It's seeing them not just as they present themselves, but as the complex, fascinating individual they are beneath the surface. This kind of attention creates what psychologists call mattering, the feeling that you matter to someone else, that your thoughts and feelings have value and impact. People are deeply drawn to those who make them feel like they matter, not in a needy or desperate way, but in a genuine, appreciative way. Now, let's explore the concept of energetic matching. Every person has an energy signature, a unique combination of their mood, their personality, their current life circumstances, and their emotional state. Magnetic people have learned to sense this energy and respond appropriately. If someone is feeling playful, they can match that playfulness without losing themselves in it. If someone is in a more serious, reflective mood, they can honor that space without becoming heavy themselves. This isn't about being a chameleon or losing your own identity, it's about being emotionally intelligent and socially attuned. This skill creates a subtle form of validation. When someone feels that their energy is being met and matched appropriately, they experience a sense of being understood at a deeper level. This understanding creates connection, and connection creates attraction, not just romantic attraction, but the broader human magnetism that draws people into our orbit. The beautiful thing about developing these skills is that they make you not just more attractive to others, but more connected to yourself. As you learn to tune into others' emotions and energy, you also become more aware of your own internal landscape. This self-awareness becomes another layer of your magnetism. As we drift deeper into our nighttime exploration, let's turn our attention to the subtle language of connection, not just the words we speak, but the entire communication symphony that happens between human beings. There's a secret language happening beneath every conversation, a language of tone, timing, energy, and unspoken understanding. Those who've learned to speak this language fluently possess a form of magnetism that's difficult to define but impossible to ignore. Let's start with the psychology of vocal tone. Your voice carries far more information than just your words. It carries your emotional state, your confidence level, your genuine interest in the conversation, and your comfort with yourself. Research shows that people make judgments about trustworthiness, competence, and attractiveness within seconds of hearing someone speak, based largely on vocal qualities rather than content. The magnetically attractive voice has several qualities. It's generally deeper and more resonant than average, not artificially lowered, but naturally grounded. It has what vocal coaches call forward placement, meaning the sound resonates in the chest and face rather than being trapped in the throat. And perhaps most importantly, it carries what we might call vocal presence, the sense that the person is fully inhabiting their voice, speaking from their whole being rather than just their head. But here's what's fascinating, the most magnetic voices also have something called vocal vulnerability. These are the subtle variations in tone, the tiny cracks or catches that reveal genuine emotion. A perfectly controlled voice can sound artificial or disconnected. A voice that carries authentic feeling, even in its imperfections, creates immediate intimacy. Now let's explore the rhythm of conversation. Most people think good conversation is about having interesting things to say, but magnetic conversationalists understand that it's more like music. It's about rhythm, pacing, and the spaces between the notes. There's something called the conversation dance, the subtle back and forth flow where each person contributes something, builds on what the other has shared, and creates moments of synchronized understanding. This dance has its own psychology. When two people fall into a good conversational rhythm, their brainwaves actually begin to synchronize. This neurological synchronization creates feelings of connection and rapport that go far beyond the content of what's being discussed. Magnetic conversationalists have learned several subtle skills. They know how to ask questions that invite deeper sharing, not invasive or pushy questions, but gentle invitations for the other person to reveal more of themselves. They understand the power of the callback, referencing something the person mentioned earlier in the conversation, showing that they were truly listening and that the person's words had impact. They've also mastered what we might call conversational generosity, the ability to make the other person look good in the conversation. Instead of trying to impress with their own stories or knowledge, they create opportunities for the other person to shine. This generosity is magnetic because it makes people feel elevated and appreciated. But perhaps the most magnetic conversational skill is the ability to find and explore emotional resonance. Every story, every experience someone shares, has an emotional core. The magnetic person learns to identify and gently explore that emotional core, not in a therapeutic way, but in a way that honors the feeling behind the story. If someone tells you about their weekend hiking trip, the unmagnetic response might be to share your own hiking story or ask logistical questions about the trail. The magnetic response might be to notice and reflect the sense of freedom or peace or accomplishment in their voice when they talk about reaching the summit. This emotional attunement creates what psychologists call felt understanding, the sense that someone doesn't just comprehend your words, but truly gets what the experience meant to you. This feeling is profoundly connecting and deeply attractive. There's also the subtle art of storytelling. Humans are wired for narrative. We understand our lives and our world through stories. Magnetic people have learned to share their experiences in ways that invite others into the story, rather than just broadcasting information. A magnetic story has vulnerability, it has sensory details that help the listener feel present in the moment, and it has an emotional arc that creates some form of connection or insight. Most importantly, magnetic storytellers know how to make their stories about universal human experiences rather than just personal achievements or complaints. As you're settling into this exploration tonight, notice how these principles aren't about manipulation or performance. They're about becoming more skilled at the fundamental human art of connection, learning to meet others in the space where real communication happens, beneath the surface of words and social conventions. Let's drift now into one of the most misunderstood aspects of human attraction, the psychology of mystery and intrigue. Not the kind of mystery that comes from playing games or withholding information, but the genuine mystique that emerges from depth, complexity, and the beautiful unknowability of a rich inner life. Picture someone who captivates you not because they're trying to be mysterious, but because there's clearly so much more to them than what appears on the surface. They share genuinely, but you sense layers of experience, wisdom, and complexity that would take years to fully understand. This is the magnetism of authentic depth. The psychology behind this is rooted in what researchers call the uncertainty principle of attraction. We're drawn to people who are somewhat predictable, we need to feel safe, but also somewhat unpredictable, we need to feel intrigued. The sweet spot is someone who's consistent in their character and values, but surprising in their thoughts, interests, and responses. Think about it, if you can completely figure someone out in the first conversation, where's the invitation for continued exploration? But if someone is completely unpredictable, where's the sense of safety and trust? Magnetic people have learned to navigate this balance beautifully. This brings us to the concept of layered revelation. Instead of downloading their entire life story in the first interaction, magnetic people reveal themselves gradually, like a beautiful book that unfolds chapter by chapter. Each interaction reveals something new, a hidden talent, an unexpected perspective, a glimpse into their inner world that you hadn't seen before. This isn't manipulation or game playing. It's the natural result of being a complex, evolving human being who doesn't feel the need to prove themselves all at once. They're comfortable with the idea that knowing someone is a journey, not a destination. There's also what we might call the iceberg principle. Just as an iceberg reveals only a small portion of its mass above water, magnetic people hint at depths beneath the surface. They might mention a book that changed their life without going into detail, reference a challenging experience that shaped them without immediately elaborating, or demonstrate a skill casually without making it the focus of attention. This creates what psychologists call cognitive loops. Your mind becomes curious about the untold stories, the unshared experiences, the deeper layers of their personality. This curiosity keeps you engaged and creates a natural desire for continued connection. But here's the crucial distinction: healthy mystery comes from genuine depth, not from artificial withholding. The magnetic person isn't hiding things to seem more interesting, they simply have rich inner lives that can't be fully communicated in any single interaction. They might be deeply passionate about subjects that don't come up in casual conversation, medieval history, or the psychology of creativity, or the way light moves through water. They might have had experiences that have given them unique perspectives on life. They might spend time in activities that feed their soul but aren't necessarily social, writing poetry, practicing meditation, or studying philosophy. This depth creates what we call conversational texture. When you talk with them, you never quite know what fascinating tangent the conversation might take. They might surprise you with an insight about human nature, a reference to something you've never heard of, or a perspective that challenges your assumptions in a gentle but thought-provoking way. The psychology here is that our brains are wired to pay attention to novelty and complexity. In a world where many interactions feel surface-level and predictable, encountering someone with genuine depth triggers our natural curiosity and interest. There's also the magnetism of the unfinished story. Magnetic people understand that some of the most powerful communication happens in what's not said. They might pause meaningfully before answering a question, letting you wonder what they're considering. They might smile mysteriously at a private thought, inviting you to wonder what amused them. This isn't about being coy or manipulative, it's about understanding that sometimes the space around words is as important as the words themselves. They've learned that curiosity is more engaging than certainty, that questions can be more powerful than answers. Consider the difference between someone who responds to, "How was your weekend?" with a detailed account of every activity, versus someone who says, "I had one of those weekends that reminded me why I love living in this city," and then maybe shares one vivid detail that captures the essence of the experience. The second response creates intrigue and invites further exploration. This brings us to perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of psychological mystery, the ability to be simultaneously open and private. Magnetic people share authentically about their emotions, their values, their perspectives on life. But they also maintain what we might call sacred privacy, aspects of their inner world that they don't feel compelled to share with everyone. This isn't about being secretive or closed off. It's about understanding that some experiences are too precious or too personal to be casually shared, and that this selectivity actually makes their genuine sharing more meaningful when it does occur. The result is someone who feels both accessible and unreachable, both knowable and mysterious. You feel like you're getting to know the real them, but you also sense that there's always more to discover. This combination is profoundly magnetic because it satisfies both our need for connection and our desire for ongoing discovery. As we move deeper into the quiet hours of our exploration, let's turn to one of the most powerful forms of human magnetism, emotional intelligence and the ability to create emotional resonance with others. Imagine being with someone who seems to understand not just what you're saying, but what you're feeling. Someone who can sense when you need encouragement and when you need space, when you're excited about something and when you're quietly worried. This isn't mind reading, it's emotional attunement, and it's one of the most attractive qualities a person can develop. The foundation of this ability lies in something psychologists call emotional granularity, the capacity to identify and understand subtle emotional states, both in yourself and others. Most people operate with a relatively basic emotional vocabulary: happy, sad, angry, scared. But emotions exist in infinite gradations and combinations. There's the melancholy that comes from nostalgia, the anxiety that comes from anticipation, the contentment that comes from feeling deeply understood. People with high emotional granularity can perceive these subtle distinctions. They notice when someone's cheerfulness has a slightly forced quality, when confidence is masking nervousness, when excitement is mixed with apprehension. This sensitivity allows them to respond to what's really happening emotionally, not just what's being presented on the surface. This brings us to the concept of emotional validation. This doesn't mean agreeing with everything someone feels, but rather acknowledging that their emotional experience is real and understandable given their perspective and circumstances. When someone feels emotionally validated, they experience a profound sense of being seen and accepted. The magnetic person has learned to offer this validation naturally. If someone expresses frustration about a situation, instead of immediately offering solutions or minimizing the problem, they might say something like, "That sounds really frustrating, I can understand why you'd feel that way." This simple acknowledgement can be more valuable than any advice. But here's what makes this truly magnetic: Emotional validation requires the validator to be comfortable with emotions, their own and others. Many people are uncomfortable with strong emotions and try to fix, minimize, or distract from them. The emotionally magnetic person can sit with someone's anger, sadness, or fear without becoming overwhelmed by it or feeling compelled to make it go away immediately. This emotional steadiness is incredibly attractive because it makes people feel safe to be human around you. They don't have to manage your comfort level by hiding their authentic feelings. This safety creates deep trust and connection. Now let's explore what we might call emotional leadership. This isn't about controlling others' emotions, but about being someone who helps create positive emotional environments. When you walk into a room, do people tend to feel more relaxed? When you're part of a conversation, do people tend to open up more? This is emotional leadership in action. It begins with emotional self-regulation, the ability to manage your own emotional state consciously. If you're feeling anxious or irritated, you can acknowledge these feelings without letting them drive your behavior. You can choose to bring calm presence to situations instead of adding to emotional chaos. But emotional leadership goes beyond just being calm. It's about actively contributing positive emotional energy to interactions. This might mean bringing gentle humor to lighten a tense moment, offering genuine appreciation to make someone feel valued, or simply holding space for whatever emotions are present without judgment. People are drawn to those who make them feel better about themselves and about life in general. This isn't about being artificially positive or denying difficult realities, it's about finding ways to acknowledge challenges while still maintaining hope and perspective. There's also something we could call emotional generosity, the willingness to offer emotional support without keeping score. This person celebrates others' successes without jealousy, offers comfort during difficulties without making it about themselves, and provides encouragement without expecting anything in return. This generosity comes from emotional abundance rather than emotional neediness. They don't need others to feel a certain way in order for them to feel okay. This non-neediness is magnetic because it allows others to relax and be authentic rather than feeling pressured to manage someone else's emotional needs. Consider the difference between someone who offers comfort because they genuinely care about your well-being, versus someone who offers comfort because they need to be needed. The first feels nurturing and safe, the second feels subtly draining and manipulative, even if that's not the intention. Perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of emotional magnetism is what we might call emotional range, the ability to access and express a full spectrum of human emotions appropriately. This isn't about being emotionally volatile, but about being emotionally available and genuine. Someone with good emotional range can be playful and lighthearted in appropriate moments, serious and focused when the situation calls for it, tender and compassionate when someone needs comfort, and passionate and intense when discussing something they care deeply about. This emotional flexibility makes them fascinating to be around because you never know what aspect of their emotional nature you might encounter. Most people tend to default to a narrow emotional range, always upbeat, consistently serious, perpetually laid back. But human beings are complex emotional creatures, and we're drawn to those who reflect that complexity back to us in healthy ways. The key is that this emotional range comes from authenticity rather than performance. These emotions are genuine responses to situations and relationships, not calculated presentations designed to create an effect. As we settle deeper into this quiet exploration, remember that developing emotional intelligence isn't about becoming perfect or always knowing the right thing to feel or say. It's about becoming more skilled at the beautiful, messy, complex dance of human emotion, learning to be present with feelings, both your own and others, in ways that create connection rather than distance. Now, as we drift into our next area of exploration, we encounter what might seem like a paradox, the magnetic power of healthy boundaries. In a world that often confuses availability with kindness and boundaries with selfishness, understanding this principle can transform how others perceive and respond to you. Picture someone who is warm and generous, but also clearly self-respecting. They're happy to help, but they don't overextend themselves. They're interested in your problems, but they don't take responsibility for solving them all. They care about your feelings, but they don't let your emotions dictate their behavior. This combination of warmth and self-respect is profoundly attractive. The psychology behind this involves several fascinating principles. First, there's what researchers call the scarcity principle. We tend to value more highly what isn't readily available. But this isn't about artificially creating scarcity through game playing. It's about the natural scarcity that comes from being a person with your own life, interests, goals, and commitments. When someone has healthy boundaries, their time and attention become more valuable because they're not freely given to everyone for every reason. When they choose to spend time with you, it feels meaningful because you know it's a genuine choice, not a default response or people-pleasing behavior. This connects to the concept of self-differentiation, the ability to be yourself even when others want or expect you to be different. People with good boundaries can maintain their own thoughts, feelings, and values even when facing pressure to conform or comply. This self-differentiation is magnetic because it signals psychological strength and integrity. It suggests that this person knows who they are and won't lose themselves in relationships or social pressures. This creates a sense of reliability and authenticity that draws others in. Consider the difference between someone who agrees with you because they genuinely share your perspective, versus someone who agrees because they want to be liked. The first feels authentic and trustworthy, the second feels uncertain and potentially unreliable. Healthy boundaries also demonstrate what psychologists call self-compassion, the ability to treat yourself with the same kindness you would show a good friend. People with good boundaries don't sacrifice their own well-being to avoid disappointing others. They understand that taking care of themselves enables them to show up more fully for the people they care about. This self-compassion is attractive because it suggests emotional maturity and self-awareness. It also implies that they'll treat you with similar respect and consideration. They won't expect you to sacrifice your well-being for their comfort either. There's also the magnetism of what we might call emotional non-reactivity. People with strong boundaries don't get easily pulled into other people's emotional storms. If someone is angry or upset, they can remain calm and present without either taking on the emotion themselves or feeling responsible for fixing it immediately. This emotional stability is incredibly attractive because it creates a sense of safety. People know they can share their struggles without overwhelming you, express their emotions without having to manage yours in return, and be themselves without worrying about destabilizing you. But perhaps the most magnetic aspect of healthy boundaries is the way they create space for genuine intimacy. When someone doesn't share everything with everyone, when they have appropriate privacy and selectivity about what they reveal and to whom, their deeper sharing becomes more meaningful. If someone tells their life story to every person they meet, their personal revelations lose their specialness. But if someone is naturally somewhat private, when they do choose to share something personal with you, it feels like a gift, a sign that you've earned their trust and that they value your connection. This selective sharing creates what we might call intimacy gradients, different levels of closeness and sharing that feel earned and meaningful rather than default and routine. Healthy boundaries also involve what we could call responsibility differentiation, knowing what is and isn't your responsibility in relationships. Magnetic people understand that they're responsible for their own emotions, choices, and life outcomes, and they don't take responsibility for others' emotions, choices, and life outcomes beyond what's appropriate and healthy. This clarity is attractive because it prevents relationships from becoming codependent or resentful. When someone takes responsibility for their own life, they don't need you to fix, save, or complete them. This makes connecting with them feel free and joyful rather than burdensome or pressured. They also don't try to take responsibility for your life, which means they respect your autonomy and your ability to handle your own challenges. This respect for your capability and independence is deeply attractive. There's also the subtle magnetism of what we might call graceful saying no. People with healthy boundaries have learned to decline requests or invitations in ways that are respectful and kind, but also clear and definitive. They don't over-explain, make elaborate excuses, or leave things ambiguous. This ability is attractive because it demonstrates self-respect and clarity of values. It also means that when they say yes to something, you know it's a genuine yes, not a reluctant compliance or people-pleasing response. The beautiful paradox is that people with the strongest boundaries often end up being the most generous, because their generosity comes from choice rather than obligation, from abundance rather than neediness, from genuine care rather than fear of rejection. As we continue our quiet journey tonight, reflect on how boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're the foundation that makes genuine connection possible. They create the safety and respect that allow authentic intimacy to flourish. As we near the end of our peaceful exploration, let's delve into perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of human magnetism, the ability to influence and inspire others not through force or manipulation, but through the quiet power of authentic leadership and gentle guidance. This isn't about controlling others or getting them to do what you want. It's about becoming the kind of person others naturally want to follow, learn from, and be around. It's about developing what we might call soft power, influence that comes from who you are rather than what you do to others. The foundation of this influence lies in something psychologists call earned authority, respect and influence that comes from demonstrated wisdom, competence, and character rather than from position or manipulation. People with earned authority don't need to tell others they're leaders, their leadership is evident in how others respond to them. This begins with what we might call quiet confidence, the deep assurance that comes from knowing your own values, capabilities, and worth without needing constant external validation. This confidence is magnetic because it's stable and genuine rather than fragile and defensive. Consider how differently people respond to someone who seeks to impress versus someone who simply is impressive. The first creates a subtle sense of insecurity or try-hardness that can be off-putting. The second creates a natural gravitational pull. You want to be around them because they make you feel elevated and inspired rather than inadequate or competitive. This quiet confidence manifests in several ways. There's physical presence, the way they carry themselves with relaxed alertness rather than tension or slouching. There's conversational presence, they speak at an appropriate volume and pace, neither rushing to fill silence nor dominating the conversation. And there's emotional presence, they're comfortable with themselves and therefore comfortable to be around. True influence also comes from what we could call authentic curiosity about others. Instead of trying to impress people with how much they know, magnetic leaders genuinely want to learn what others think, feel, and understand about the world. This curiosity is flattering and engaging, it makes people feel valued and interesting. This curiosity leads to better listening, which leads to better understanding, which leads to more relevant and helpful responses. When you truly understand someone's perspective, you can offer insights, suggestions, or support that actually fits their situation and needs. People are naturally drawn to those who make them feel understood and who offer genuinely helpful perspectives. This isn't about having all the answers, it's about asking good questions and offering thoughtful responses based on real understanding rather than assumptions. There's also what we might call inspirational modeling, becoming an example of the qualities and behaviors you'd like to see in the world. Instead of telling people what they should do, you simply embody those qualities consistently and let others observe and learn from your example. If you value kindness, you consistently treat others with kindness. If you believe in personal growth, you actively work on developing yourself. If you think integrity is important, you align your actions with your values even when it's difficult or inconvenient. This modeling is powerful because it's non-threatening and non-controlling. People don't feel pressured or judged, they simply see an attractive way of being and may choose to incorporate elements of it into their own lives. Magnetic influence also involves what we could call empowering interaction, the ability to bring out the best in others through your interactions with them. Instead of trying to make yourself look good, you focus on helping others feel capable, valued, and appreciated. This might mean asking someone's opinion and genuinely considering their perspective. It might mean acknowledging their strengths or contributions in a sincere way. It might mean creating opportunities for them to shine or succeed. This empowering approach makes people feel better about themselves, and they associate those positive feelings with you. The psychology here is that people are naturally drawn to those who elevate them rather than those who compete with them or make them feel small. When you help others feel capable and valued, they want to be around you more and are more receptive to your ideas and perspectives. Perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of gentle influence is what we might call strategic vulnerability, the ability to share your own challenges, uncertainties, and growth areas in ways that create connection rather than undermining your credibility. This isn't about oversharing or making others responsible for your emotional needs. It's about being human and relatable while still maintaining your strength and capability. When a leader can say, "I'm still figuring this out too," or "I made a mistake here," it makes them more trustworthy and approachable rather than less so. This vulnerability works because it demonstrates emotional intelligence and self-awareness. It shows that you're secure enough to admit imperfection and wise enough to continue learning and growing. These qualities are deeply attractive and inspire others to be more authentic and growth-oriented themselves. There's also the subtle art of collaborative leadership, the ability to guide and influence while making others feel like partners rather than followers. This involves including others in decision-making processes, asking for their input and ideas, and giving credit generously when things go well. This collaborative approach is magnetic because it respects others' intelligence and autonomy while still providing direction and vision. People feel valued and empowered rather than controlled or diminished. The beautiful paradox of this kind of influence is that the less you try to control others, the more they want to follow your lead. The more you focus on serving others' growth and well-being rather than your own agenda, the more naturally your own goals tend to be achieved. As we prepare to conclude our gentle exploration, remember that true influence comes not from techniques or strategies, but from becoming the kind of person who naturally inspires trust, respect, and admiration through authentic character and genuine care for others. And so, as our hour together draws to a close, let's take a moment to weave together the threads we've explored tonight. Like a tapestry viewed from different angles, the psychology of human magnetism reveals itself to be both beautifully complex and surprisingly simple. At its heart, everything we've discussed tonight comes back to one fundamental truth: people are drawn to those who make them feel good about themselves and about life. Not through false flattery or manipulation, but through genuine appreciation, authentic presence, and the kind of emotional generosity that comes from a full heart rather than an empty one seeking to be filled. Think about the most magnetic person you've ever known. Chances are, they weren't perfect. They probably weren't the most conventionally attractive, the wealthiest, or even the most talented person in the room. But something about their presence made you feel more alive, more interesting, more capable of being your best self. That's the essence of true magnetism. It's not about taking energy from others, but about contributing positive energy to every interaction. The beautiful irony is that the more you focus on becoming genuinely attractive, developing depth, emotional intelligence, authentic confidence, and generous boundaries, the less you need to worry about being attractive to others. It becomes a natural byproduct of being fully yourself. This journey we've explored tonight isn't about learning to manipulate or control others. It's about understanding the deeper currents of human connection so you can navigate them with wisdom, authenticity, and grace. It's about becoming someone worth knowing, worth trusting, worth being around. Remember that developing these qualities is not a destination but a lifelong journey. Every interaction is an opportunity to practice presence, every conversation a chance to deepen your understanding of human nature, every relationship a space to grow in emotional intelligence and authentic connection. The most magnetic people are often those who see themselves as perpetual students of human nature, always curious about others, always working on themselves, always growing in their capacity to connect and contribute. They understand that charisma isn't a fixed trait you either have or don't have. It's a set of skills and qualities that can be developed through conscious practice and genuine commitment to grow. That's you drift off to sleep tonight. Consider carrying with you not a list of techniques to implement, but an invitation to deeper authenticity. The world needs more people who are genuinely present, emotionally intelligent, and committed to creating positive connections with others. Perhaps tomorrow you'll find yourself listening a little more deeply to someone, or offering genuine appreciation for something you might have previously taken for granted. Maybe you'll notice someone's emotional state and respond with a little more sensitivity, or maintain a boundary with a little more grace and self-respect. These small shifts, practiced consistently over time, create profound changes not just in how others perceive you, but in how you experience life itself. When you become skilled at connecting authentically with others, life becomes richer, relationships become more meaningful, and you begin to see the beautiful complexity and potential in every person you meet. The psychology of attraction, at its deepest level, is really the psychology of love, not just romantic love, but the broader human love that recognizes the inherent worth and fascinating complexity of every person. When you can approach others with this kind of appreciation and curiosity, when you can be fully present and authentically yourself, when you can contribute positive energy while maintaining healthy boundaries, you become naturally magnetic, not because you're trying to attract others, but because you've become the kind of person who naturally draws others into your orbit, not to use them or impress them, but to share in the beautiful experience of genuine human connection. And with that thought, our quiet exploration comes to an end. May your dreams tonight be filled with images of meaningful connection, authentic presence, and the kind of magnetic authenticity that makes the world a little brighter. Wherever you go, sweet dreams, fellow travelers in the art of human connection. Tomorrow awaits with new opportunities to practice these gentle arts of attraction, influence, and authentic relationship.